Hi, I'm Rachel Woody with Rachel Christine Consulting, and today we're here to talk about when and how to engage a grant writing specialist, or what they should really be called, grant acquisition specialist. Now, every museum and archive has a different sort of situation. Sometimes there's a development department, sometimes there's no department. Sometimes you have a grant writer on staff, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have staff who happen to be awesome at grant writing, but just need help with a couple different bits. Because the grant acquisition process is just that, it's a process, there are multiple components to which you may need assistance. So here are a couple scenarios in which it might be helpful to have a consultant on your side. So first scenario is you don't have a project, you've not done grants before, your staff is in overwhelm mode. This is very much a time where you need to do some training, get up to speed, and really invest in the grant acquisition process because you're starting from the beginning. The second scenario is you may be able to construct the grant project, or maybe you've done some grant writing before, but you're missing some of those fundamental elements, whether that is how to break down the project and do some project management, or maybe you're lacking the writing component or are not quite sure how to follow all of the federal application guidelines. That's when it's also helpful to bring in a consultant to work side by side with your team. The third scenario is a little bit more unique in that maybe you do have access to a grant writer, but that grant writer may not actually be great at writing grants for museums and archives. That doesn't mean that they're not good, it's just that museum and archive grants needs a happy marriage between being able to be clear and articulate, stating the facts, making a compelling case, great writing, but also being familiar with the museum and archives world, the professional terms that need to be used, the standard expectations, the national and international standards. Those need to be a component of the grant application as well. So sometimes just because you have someone on the board that might be a good grant writer doesn't necessarily mean they would be an effective grant writer for you. So that's a scenario where you may need to bring a museum grant consultant in. Now the fourth scenario might be a bit trickier because you've tried to apply for grants and you've not been successful yet. Now, no matter what component you're missing, perhaps you don't know what component you're missing, this is a great opportunity to bring in outside counsel, bring in a grant expert, bring in a consultant to help review the efforts that your museum and archives has done thus far and help you identify what maybe went wrong and provide you a strategy to surmount that and be successful the next time. So while it may not be ideal and even hard for museums logically to pay money and invest in a grant consultant, it has to be viewed as a long-term investment in the museum or archives' long-term grant strategy. If you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not being successful now, right now you're just wasting staff time and resources, which is also costly. Not to mention the opportunity cost of not getting those grants. So I hope you found that helpful. Check out my website to see my services. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to stay up to date on the latest tips and tricks. And don't forget to get your free electronic copy of my book, A Survivor's Guide to Museum Grant Writing, courtesy of Lucida Press. Or go to Amazon.com if you'd like a paperback. Thank you.